to have a relationship with His Son, Jesus Christ. And if we can help you in any way, we bid you to come and be with us and let us show you through the God's Word how you can have a closer walk with God. For the past few weeks, we have been discussing the subject of marriage, and we've looked at various aspects. We began by looking at the cornerstone of marriage, and then we looked at the perfect match, examining Ephesians 5:22-33, and the roles that God gave in marriage. And then we talked about marriages under attack, and we talked about the attack that our society and the world at large puts on marriage, and we looked at what God says about divorce and about remarriage, and we examined that at great length. The last couple of weeks we were looking at some principles that would help us have good marriages. We talked about sailing the 7 seas of marriage, and so we talked about things that we can do in order that will make our marriage pleasant and make it richer, fuller, and longer lasting and more happy. And so today we're going to look at one of those seas that we talked about last week, but we're going to go in a little bit more detail because it's extremely important. We're going to talk about communication. Communication is absolutely vital in a relationship, especially in the relationship of marriage. Communication is something that must be done if the marriage is going to be happy and fulfilling. In Proverbs 15 and verse number 1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And so there is a way that we can communicate that is profitable. But there are other ways that we can communicate which are harmful, and they can have disastrous effect on the marriage relationship. What we would like to do is not only explain from God's perspective the importance of communication, but also how to communicate. In another lesson, we're going to talk about listening. Listening is an art, and it's something that must be achieved, and it must be worked on in order to make communication even better. And so in this lesson, we want to examine communicating, how to talk to one another and communicate with one another within the confines of marriage in order to make the marriage stronger, fuller, richer, and more happy. That's what we're striving to do. Now, what does it mean to communicate? To communicate means to convey information about, to make known, to impart, to have interchange of ideals, to express oneself in a way that one is clearly understood. It's a transmission of knowledge. And so to communicate is to impart or convey information. It's an interchange. It's a dual process. It takes two people in this process to communicate. And it is a transmission of knowledge. We're trying to transmit some understanding or some knowledge to one another. And so it becomes very important when you're talking about the close relationship of marriage. In Proverbs chapter 5, in verse 1 and 2, Proverbs 5, verse 1 and 2. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Lend your ear to my understanding, that you may preserve discretion and your lips may keep knowledge. In Luke chapter 19, Luke chapter 19, and verse number 48. Verse number 48. And we're unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. In Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 3, Ezra found the book of law. He stood on a platform and he read it to the people, and they gave attention to it. If communication is going to be effective, we must be attentive when our mate is communicating with us. We must give them our undivided attention. We need to take time to make time. When our mate is communicating something about our relationship, then we need to make time to sit and be attentive to what our mate is telling us or expressing to us and the knowledge they are trying to convey to us. You see, to be attentive, you've got to listen. You've got to seem like you're interested. You've got to give your time and attention to the person who's talking to you. When your wife talks to you, do you listen, or is your mind 1,000 miles away? Or is your mind on other things? And you really hear the sound, but you're not listening, you're not grasping the understanding of what she's saying. And then she feels that you don't care about her feelings. You don't care about her opinion. You don't care about what she thinks. Because you're not listening. Because you're not giving attention to what she's saying. Now, if there's going to be a communication process, there has to be a dual partnership here. The person is talking and the person is listening. And we have to be attentive to what that person is saying if we want to get the knowledge and the understanding of what they are trying to communicate. So we need to be attentive, and we need to sit there and listen. Know what to say, know what you want to say. No hidden agendas. You shouldn't communicate in a way that your mate doesn't know where you're headed, doesn't know where you're going, doesn't understand what the problem is, doesn't understand what exactly you're trying to say. Choose words carefully. We need to choose our words carefully. Words have meaning. Words communicate meaning. And so we must use our words carefully. Use words that convey information. Stay on track. Don't drift away. Don't bring anything else in to the conversation that's going to get us off track of what we came together to talk about. If you're going to talk about children, don't bring everything else under the sun, and don't bring it in and add to the discussion when you're talking about your children. Or if you're talking about your relationship as husband and wife, keep it on track. Keep it on in that vein. Don't try to bring a lot of other things in and confuse the issue. Try to keep the personal attacks out of your conversation. It's not going to do you any good to get name calling. It's not going to do you any good to be ugly. And we need to not make it personal. We need to consider, in Matthew 7 verse 12, the Bible says, doing to others as you would have them doing to you. That's sometimes called the golden rule. You know, it applies in marriage as well as it applies in anything else. If we want our mate to listen to us, to give us time and attention, then if we would not like to be talked to harshly or rudely, or if we would not like to be called names, it's probably a pretty good thing that they're not going to like it either. And if we're harsh or rude, or if we call them names, then we're really working against communication. It's going to be counterproductive. And so if you wouldn't like people to talk to you that way, it's probably a good thing that they don't want you to talk to them that way either. And so we need to keep personal attacks out of it. We need to not get into a screaming match. We don't need to get into an argument to see who can make the best argument and who can yell the loudest, because then reason goes out the door. We need to communicate whatever the problem is and keep on track of what we're trying to accomplish. Express love and concern, not hate. Turn in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. It gives us a definition of true love. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, though I speak with the tongue of men and angels, but have not love, I have become a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I can remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, though I give my body to be burned, and have not love, it profits me nothing. We need to express to our mate love and not hate. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, it tells us to speak the truth in love, that all may grow up in the things into him who is head, in Christ. We need to express love and concern, not hate. Our speech should express the love that we have for our mate. And it should be expressed in how we talk to them and how we present our problems when they arise in our marriage. We should never be hateful. We should never be rude. We should never be ugly. We should always be considerate. And when we communicate in that way, we're going to get more accomplished. Make a commitment. Show a desire to communicate. Make a real effort in your marriage to talk. Talk at regular intervals. Don't just talk over the dinner table. When you go to bed at night, talk. Communicate. And when your wife says, I need to talk to you about something, sit down. Take the time. Act like you're interested. Give her the time. Make the effort in order that she can convey whatever information she needs to tell us. Demonstrate a commitment to solve the problem. Problems will arise in marriage. They're going to happen. They're going to happen in our budgets. They're going to happen financially when things happen that we didn't expect. They're going to happen with our children at school or in the home. They're going to happen with sickness and illness. They're going to happen with things we had not planned on, things that can go wrong with the house. They're just a host and they're just a lineage of things that can happen. That's going to cause us to have to communicate in order to solve the problem. How do you do that? Well, you've got to talk. You've got to communicate. You've got to communicate by expressing whatever the problems are in order to solve them. And so we're going to have to demonstrate a commitment to solve the problem. In other words, when our mate wants to talk to us, then we should allow them that opportunity. And it should be reciprocal. Pray about the problem together. Pray together. Pray about your problem. Pray about looking for God's will for solution, asking for his help. Pray together and then discuss it and see what the best course of action is. Pray and ask for patience and wisdom in finding solutions. We need to pray for wisdom. We need to pray for patience. And we need to pray that we exhibit those things when we get into these discussions, when we have to communicate about problems. And we need to communicate these problems in a way that's going to be productive and not counterproductive. And when we have hate or animosity, or we're unkind, or we're rude, or we're harsh, we're gonna get counterproductive results. And so we need to pray that God gives us wisdom in how to approach this and how to communicate what's going on and the things that we need and the problems that we have so that we can correct them without damaging the marriage. Make words constructive. Don't attack. Don't make them personal. Don't attack your mate. Don't attack. Somebody may have made a mistake. Okay, they made a mistake. Don't crucify them for that mistake. Don't belittle them. Don't be belligerent. We need to demonstrate love. And you don't do that when you're attacking your mate. When you're attacking and name-calling and making it personal. We need to remember that that is the person that we love. That's the person that we ask to join us and be our mate for life. And we need to understand that how we speak to her and how she speaks to me is going to have a lot to do with how much they're going to respect me and going to respect the relationship. And so we need to be constructive and we need not to be attacking. Show consideration and courtesy. Understand both persons' perspectives are important. Your wife's perspective is just as important as yours. My perspective is just as important as hers. Both of us need to look at each other as our feelings and our input is to be considered. Do not interrupt. Let your mate make the point. Do not interrupt her. Don't think that you know what she's going, where she's going, or you know what she's going to say. You know, it's something I got to work on. Sometimes we get in these discussions and I think I know where this is going, and I interrupt. That's the wrong thing to do. Let them finish their point. Let them get their point out on the table, and then you can sit down and discuss it. Do not anticipate what will be said. You know, it may sound like something you've heard before, but maybe there's a different wrinkle in it that caused her to ask about this again. Don't anticipate. Don't think that you get in her head and you know what she's going to say before she says it. And so, just be patient. Understand the importance of these types of discussions. How will a problem be solved if you don't discuss it? You're not going to solve a problem with the child if you don't discuss it. If mom's having a problem with your son at home, that's got to be talked about. That's got to be discussed. You're going to have to sit down and discuss that. If the child is having problems in the school, you both need to sit down and talk about it, and then talk about it with your child. And your children need to see that you communicate in your marriage. They need to see that you talk to one another, that you speak to one another, and you do it in a kind way, and not in a harsh and ugly way. And they need to see that you work out your problems, you sit down. You know, your children see you pray together. Your children need to see you sit down and work out a problem. Now, there's some things that are more personal that they need to be left out of, and that's understandable. But they should see that this is something that's done in a way that's constructive and is productive, and it's not done in a way that's going to be counterproductive. And not only that, it's going to teach a bad influence to your child. And so remember, parents and husbands and wives, your children are watching. And if you don't demonstrate how to work out problems, then that problems will come. You know, some people think they should never talk about anything negative in front of their children. If they have a problem, then it always should be done privately. Well, not necessarily. Because how are you going to demonstrate to your children that problems do arise in marriage, but that you talk them out? And when you are together, and when you make a decision, then don't be counterproductive by working against yourself, by denying things that you'd already agreed upon. Again, that shows a divided front, and that's something a child will pick up. And he'll go to where he appears to be the weaknesses at in order to get what they want. That's a danger. And so we need to understand that we're never going to solve a problem in marriage, whatever it might be, if we don't communicate. If we don't talk, we're never going to get to the solution. And so we must know and be willing to communicate. Patient practice is a golden rule. Matthew 7, I just referred to this golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Speak like you want to be spoken to. If you don't want people to be harsh, rude, unkind, attacking, and you don't want people to do that to you, then it's probably a good chance that they won't want you to do that to them. And so if that's not how you want to be spoken to, then don't speak to your mate that way. Give your mate the same time you desire to be given. If you want to be given time to express your concern, your needs, and the problems that you have, then be reciprocal to give your mate the same time by listening to the things that she's saying, and she should be reciprocal in giving you the time in order to answer them, and then you to communicate together to see what the best possible solution is to fix the problem. Show a willingness to want to communicate problems, feelings, and solutions. You know what? You're never going to have your mate come to you with a problem if she does not see that you're concerned in finding a solution. If you seem to be bothered, if you seem to be distracted, if it makes you angry when she comes to you with a problem, then she's going to quit doing that. She's just going to try to do it by herself, and when she can't, she's going to become frustrated, and she's going to lose respect for you. You see, she's got to know that when she comes to you, that you're concerned, that you're going to listen, that you're going to try to help her find a solution to this problem, and you're going to consider her input in the process. You see, you have to show a willingness to communicate problems, feelings, and solutions. If your mate does not feel that you want to do that, or you desire to do that, then they're not going to do it. And problems are going to go unchecked, and feelings are going to be hurt, and respect is going to be lost, and love is going to be weakened. You see, it's like a domino effect. And so we must be careful that we never demonstrate that kind of an attitude. You know, when we talk about communicating, we're talking about conveying understanding and knowledge to another person. When we communicate, then we allow an exchange of ideals, of concepts, of understandings and what we believe or perceive to be the problem. And if we're not patient, if we're unwilling, and if we interrupt, and if we're rude, or kind, or harsh, or we try to intimidate by making them feel silly or stupid, by getting all upset about these things, then it's going to diminish the relationship. It's going to diminish the process of her or him coming to the other person, because they're going to soon understand that it's a waste of time, because that person's really not willing to listen, not really going to be considerate, and instead of it being something that has to be done, it's something that's looked at with drudgery, and something that looks like, well, it won't do any good anyway, and so the problems don't get solved, they go unchecked, and what it does is causes more problems. It's also eroding love that both have for each other. It's also eroding respect that the husband or the wife have for one another, and is teaching a horrible example to the children who are watching as the hatred between their mother and father and the husband and wife are escalating. Now, I understand, and you understand, that time and energy and effort are going to have to be spent in order to communicate these things when they come up in our marriages. Yes, it's going to take you time. Yes, it's going to make effort on your part. Yes, it's going to cause you to have to invest in yourself and invest in your mate. And it's going to take you to be attentive, for you to listen, to you to be considerate, for you to be kind and express love in the way that you communicate. I believe from experience and by observation that this tends to be more of a problem for men than it is women. Men, we get so wrapped up in our jobs and in our lives and things that we have to do that we just kind of shut down everything else, and we don't really want to be bothered. And we express that by the way we conduct ourselves when our mate's trying to communicate with us. If we seem to be bothered, if we seem to be sidetracked, or we really seem to be disinterested, then why would the mate come to us to talk about it if she knows that's the kind of reception that she's going to get? She's not. And over a period of time, she'll quit talking. She'll quit communicating, and that's going to prove disastrous, not just in talking about problems, but in communicating in everyday life. You know, we need to communicate in so many ways, not just to solve problems. We need to communicate our feelings towards our mate. And we do that not just with our actions, but we do that with our words. We do that by how we talk to them, the tone of voice, and how we express ourselves when we have difficulties in our marriage, how we address them, and how we address them when things that we perceive to be wrong that need to be corrected. How do you approach your wife? Do you do it in a kind way? Do you do it in an understanding way? Or are you harsh, or are you rude, or are you intimidating, or are you accusatory? Again, all these things are going to make it more difficult in order to find a solution and to not destroy the feelings within the relationship. Too many marriages are not very happy because the man and wife do not know how to communicate. They do not know how to express and convey the things that need to be discussed within the relationship of marriage. You know what? Every aspect of your marriage is going to need communication. Children, you're going to have to communicate. About a budget, about finances, you're going to have to communicate. About problems that happen in the home, you're going to have to communicate. About intimacy between you and your mate, you're going to have to communicate. If there's a problem in any of those areas, you're going to have to communicate. And if you have a problem with respect or with your mate showing you respect, you're going to have to communicate that. And so there's not an aspect within your relationship that you don't need to communicate. Just at any aspect of your marriage, you need to communicate. And so I tell people all the time, when I'm marrying them and they ask me what is the most important thing about marriage, I say communication. They say, what's the second thing? Communication. What's the third thing? Communication. You see, communication is extremely important because it plays a vital role in every part of your marriage. In every part of your marriage, you're going to have to be able to communicate when trouble and when problems present themselves. You're going to have to understand that you're going to have to take the time, you're going to have to expend the energy, and you're going to have to act like you're interested, and you're going to have to be kind, understanding, patient, and you're going to have to not interrupt, and you're going to have to listen, and you're going to have to be attentive, and then you need to sit together, look at the options, pray about it, think about it, and then arrive at the best conclusion and solution to the problem. But you don't want to damage a relationship in the process. And so if we don't learn to communicate, we're not just failing in communication, we're going to damage the relationship. We're not going to make it stronger, we're not going to make it closer, and we're going to do damage to it that could have long-term effects. And so in closing this morning, communication is the responsibility of both parties. There is no communicating unless there are two people involved in this process. There has to be one that talks, there has to be one that listens. And then they have to be reciprocated in order to find solutions. When we learn how to communicate, and we communicate rightly, we strengthen the relationship, we make it more loving, more kind, and we have lesser problems because we can communicate them before they escalate. Communication required by both parties, husband and wife.